The NBA conference semifinals are off and running, people, with a couple more game ones on the schedule tonight. So the Mavs and Suns, plus the Sixers and Heat, without the man on your screen, Joel Embiid, after suffering an orbital fracture and a concussion in that final game against Toronto. But hey, reports say he could return as early as game 3 in this series. But the big man averaging 46 DraftKings fantasy points. Look at that. In Philly's first round series. Could probably expect now James Harden to get the Trae Young treatment from the Heat. What's up, everybody? Good to see you. Happy Monday, if there is such a thing. Welcome to The Sweat, presented by DraftKings. I am Emerson Lance. We got a big show coming up. We're going to recap the NFL draft with Pierce and Jeff, who the biggest steal was, who had the best draft, the worst draft. Nothing like a Monday morning quarterback following the 3-day event in Las Vegas. We got some MLB picks to dish out, plus 16 teams begin their quest to hoist Lord Stanley as the NHL playoffs get underway this evening. But first things first, before we get into tonight's playoff games, let's take a gander here at our Fantasy Player of the Week presented by Supercuts. This week, we're going to give it to Ja Morant, who, despite the Game 1 loss to Golden State, leading the Sunday slate with just under 69 DraftKings fantasy points. Nice. Morant just missing out on a triple-double, 34 points, 10 apples, 9 rebounds, also racked up 3 steals. Yes, he missed the final shot of the game and disappointed his dad, but we don't care about that for fantasy purposes, obviously. Hey, good morning to our NBA panel. DraftKings contributor Nick Fryer, RotoWire's Nick Whalen. Fryer, who's worth paying up for tonight? Give us someone who could put up Ja Morant-type fantasy numbers, please.
Yeah, I think you were spot on with James Harden, him getting that Trae Young treatment. I really don't have much faith in him going into this series in general, even if Embiid is out there. My favorite guy tonight, as much as Luka could go off, I think is Chris Paul at 9.9K going up against the Mavericks. Sure, they're probably going to come out with a similar output, and I understand that Luka has a higher ceiling, but I think the consistency with Paul's game, what he did throughout the course of last series, and kind of the question marks with Devin Booker too, as much as he's good to go, his hamstring, that can be a finicky thing. We're seeing it in the Celtics series as well with Jaylen Brown. But with Paul, scored 50-plus DK fantasy points in 4 out of the 6 games in the last round. He had that one clunker. That was pretty much it. So you know what you're getting with him on a nightly basis. Whether Booker's in or out, he's going to put up some semblance of fantasy production at a high level. And with Luka, I just think you can just save a lot more by going with Paul and still get that similar outcome.
I mean, Harden here, Waylon, second highest priced point guard here on the slate. But as I mentioned, that Trae Young treatment, remember? So he was shut down, Trae Young, 15 points per game on 31% shooting in that 5-game victory over Atlanta, talking that Heat defense.
Yeah, I mean, a couple of games in single-digit scoring for Trae Young, a couple of games where it just looked like he could not get free whatsoever. And, yeah, I mean, James Harden, I think, physically is maybe a little bit better matchup for this Miami defense. Part of the issue with Trae Young is you throw somebody like Jimmy Butler on him, physically he has, 4 or 5 inches, probably 50 pounds on a guy like Trae Young. At least, James Harden probably won't be pushed around in that way. But I think you have a lot of the same concerns where if Miami is able to take James Harden out of what he likes to do, James Harden, much like Trae Young, has a tendency to just kind of stand there and say, well, I guess if I can't get to my step back, if I can't get to the rim, there's nothing else I can do. He's not going to run around. He's not going to make the defense chase him like someone like a Stephen Curry, like we saw in Game 1 against Memphis yesterday. So James Harden is very risky. I think there is, a case to be made that if you want to zag, he's probably going to have lower rostership than he probably should based on the Embiid injury. I think a lot of people are kind of along the same lines as we are where, with James Harden, we're talking a future Hall of Famer, maybe a top 50 guy ever. And everybody's unanimously like, we got to wait and see. He's so bad in the playoffs. I don't know if I feel comfortable rolling with him. So if it's me right now, I'm still going with Luka. I'm willing to pay the extra money. 11,200 is a lot, but we saw it in the 3 games last round. Like his worst case scenario at this point is like 25, 9, and 9 with a couple steals. The previous 2 years against the Clippers when it was kind of a 1-on-5 situation, even if the Mavs end up losing this series in 4 or 5 games, you can pretty much count on Luka Doncic to give you close to a 25-point triple-double, if not more, on any given night.
All right, Waylon, so with all that cash you're spending right now, hook me up with a value play.
Mm-hmm. So there's a few that I like. I'll start with the Mavericks. I think it's a little bit of a crapshoot, but based on what we saw in round 1, I mean, you have multiple players who are playing big-time minutes for this team. Dorian Finney-Smith is like 40-plus every single night. Reggie Bullock approaching 45 minutes every single night with Tim Hardaway, obviously sidelined for this team. So both of those guys are players that I kind of always find myself plugging into a lineup, whether it's a showdown or a full slate contest, which we're only talking 2 games tonight. But even though they maybe don't have like the highest statistical ceiling, Dorian Finney-Smith's not going to go off for 30 and 10, but when you're just out there for 45 minutes in a playoff game, you're going to rack up stats. So those are 2 guys that I always target. Maxi Kleba came up big for Dallas in round 1. We'll see if that carries over. He's another mid to low guy who I target. And then I think, there's going to be a lot of people flocking to Paul Reed, who's at 4,200. He was already in the Sixers rotation during round 1, saw 9 to 10 minutes a game behind Embiid. With Embiid out of there, it's like we can't trust DeAndre Jordan at this point, right? So I think Paul Reed is a natural pivot. Again, he's going to be popular. Maybe there's a case to be made that you want to zag on that, at least for game 1. But $4,200, I mean, it makes it pretty easy to slot Paul Reed into your lineup.
Okay, do you agree with that, Fryer? And who do you look for some value?
I do think Reed is a guy that should be on your radar, and honestly, DeAndre Jordan too. That guy has been passed around so much over the past couple of years. It's kind of funny. But George Niang is actually another guy that I'm looking at. I think that this Sixers Heat matchup is where the most value is going to come from because you have no Joel Embiid. Niang is one of those guys that I'm going to look to. Of course, lines up at the power forward, 4.1K going up against Miami. Without Embiid on the floor this season, he garners a 20.2% usage rate. So nothing crazy, but he's getting consistent minutes when Embiid was playing throughout this series. So that's only going to go upward in these first couple games, averaging 0.8 DK fantasy points per minute without Embiid on the floor. But if I had to say my favorite guy, though, I think I'd go with Gabe Vincent at 4.4K going up on the other side of this matchup. I know Victor Oladipo's got the most upside, and obviously at 5.1K, he can give you a ton of value still if Butler doesn't go. But whether or not Butler goes, and obviously some of these other guys that are possibly going to be sidelined for this game, I think Gabe Vincent is a really solid, comfortable floor play in the value spot where he averaged 5 times value throughout most of this last series. I think he only had one real clunker in all of it. And as long as he's getting over 20 minutes, he's going to be bringing that value too. So, and he should be getting that tonight with just Lowry out alone.
Well, Fryer, over on the sportsbook, what's your betting approach to this Heat 76ers game? Because as we mentioned, no Joel Embiid. The Heat aren't exactly healthy either, though, because you already have Kyle Lowry ruled out, and then Jimmy Butler's status is also up in the air.
Yes, Jimmy Butler and then half of the rest of the roster. So this is one when it comes to the spread. I know it's at 7.5 right now. I do like the Heat winning this one, but I need to see what Butler's status is before I'm touching this spread. I think right now what I've kind of been going with throughout the early going in the postseason is the first quarter totals, whether I'm looking at a team total or the combined total. And in this one, I like the under for the first quarter total, which is at 53.5 points right now. Did not go over this number once throughout the Miami-Atlanta series. It was a little bit different with the Raptors and the 76ers, but I think Miami's going to set the tone in this series from the jump, whether or not Jimmy Butler's on the floor, because you still have Bam Adebayo there on the defensive end. He's going to make a big impact. And then with no Joel Embiid too, the scoring is going to be a bit of an issue for the 76ers. If Butler gets the green light and you don't love still backing the under for both teams, I think that going with the Sixers at under 25.5 points in the first quarter is also a safe way to go.
All right, Waylon, how do we feel about the 7.5 point spread here?
Well, first of all, I love that call on the first quarter under. I like the under 208.5 in general on this game. I think when you remove a player like Joel Embiid, there's always an adjustment period where the team kind of has to figure out what to do, and oftentimes that leads to some pretty clunky offense. In terms of the 7.5 point spread, I think I'm pretty comfortable backing Miami. I know there's 6 rotation guys who are questionable right now, in addition to Kyle Lowry already being ruled out. That they're taking the late season OKC approach to the injury report in the postseason, which is pretty much unprecedented. But if you look on DraftKings, there are player props listed for Jimmy Butler, which is pretty much typically a good sign that he's going to play in this game. It almost felt to me like they used Game 5 of the Atlanta series as a rest day for these guys. They were so confident that they would beat the Hawks that I think oftentimes Jimmy Butler would play through the knee soreness that ended up keeping him out. But I think the Sixers missing Embiid is just such a big deal, especially with how much trust we've lost in James Harden. It's not like Philly doesn't have the talent on paper. Harden, Maxey, Tobias Harris, there's still plenty of pieces there where there shouldn't be a complete blowout. But man, I mean, even once Harden joined the team, it was such a Embiid-centric offense and Embiid-centric defense. You take that away. I trust Philly to adjust at some point, but I think they're going to get blitzed in game one. I think they're in a really tough spot here.
Okay, and then real quick on this last one here, Waylon, Mavs and Suns, maybe a little easier to handicap. I know Phoenix is 5.5-point favorite. I think Phoenix has also won 9 straight games against Dallas. So who do you like in this one?
Got to go Phoenix, right? I mean, with all due respect to Luka Doncic, I think we see a series much like those Dallas Clippers series from the last couple of years where it feels like Luka's going for 40, 10, and 10 every game, but they're losing, 4 out of 5 of those contests. I think Phoenix kind of got tripped up. I think, not having Devin Booker, we almost like forgot about that and kind of got lost in this narrative of New Orleans being this fun upset team. But Phoenix at full strength is an absolute wagon, guys. I'm using the W word. And I think they're going to remind people in round 2. So I like Phoenix in game 1 at home, -5.5.
And then, Fryer, you're also going to ask yourself, how effective will Booker be?
Yeah, that's my big question mark, and that's actually why, as much as I still think the Suns will go out and win this one, I think the Mavericks are going to cover in this. They were one of the best teams against the spread throughout the regular season. I know that only means so much, but they did cover in every game last series outside of the first game. I know the Jazz were a disappointment. Lord knows that I talked a ton of trash about them in that series. But the Suns, they covered, was it 2 out of the 6 games in that last, or sorry, 4 out of the 6 games in that last series. But when you look at the spread, they only covered on this spread against the Pelicans, who are a lesser opponent, 3 times out of this series, and there was a narrow 4th that they wouldn't have covered at this number. And I understand the spread is a different one for this one versus those games throughout last series, but still, this is a far superior opponent, I think, than the Pelicans, despite all the excitement around them. And with Booker, a hamstring thing, to me, that is a big question mark too. So I don't trust that going into this first game. But throughout the course of the series, sure, still, I think the Mavericks cover tonight.
Yeah, Suns disappointing 21-22 against the spread as a home favorite this season. Guys, great work. Thank you for the help. We got some NFL stuff to discuss because the 2022 draft wrapped up over the weekend in Vegas. It got really weird. We'll talk who the biggest steal of this year's draft was coming up with our analysts right after some of them give us a breakdown of what exactly makes someone a steal. Here's what they said.
What makes a guy a draft day steal?
What is a steal in the draft?
What makes a guy a steal?
What makes a draft steal?
There are 2 things that make a player a draft day steal. Was he taken below where he was originally slotted to be drafted, or is he the best player at his position but wasn't taken first in his position group?
You have to take into account when they were drafted and what those teams got out of it.
For someone to be a real draft day steal in the NFL, they can't just be good. That's just a good value pick. That's just a guy performing to expectations.
Just like a bust is someone who doesn't live up to their pre-draft expectations, a steal is someone who exceeds their pre-draft expectations.
No one was talking about them potentially, or there was a lot of question marks around these guys and they exceeded expectation.
He's got to be so good that when we sit back, the media, and look back and look at this guy's career, we've got to say, how did everyone pass on this guy? He was so good.
If you get some of these guys almost like value picks later in the draft and can contribute in a big way, and we've seen it all throughout the league, it's those value guys near the end of the draft when nobody is really paying attention to at all. And these are just guys that they're just looking to fill their roster. I think that's what defines a steal in the draft.
All right, so we polled our DK analysts to come up with the list of the top 5 biggest NFL draft steals of all time. Really not a shocker there to see Tom Brady at the top, because throughout history, we've seen players that had no business evolving into impact performers relative to their draft position. Joe Montana coming in at number 2. Hall of Famer Shannon Sharpe, Roger Staubach, Aaron Rodgers, 24th overall in the first round back in 2005. I'm sure he's a wee bit emotional after this past draft with the Packers. Our panel this morning talking NFL, DraftKings contributors, Pierce Dietrich, DraftKings contributor, Jeff Ulrich. What's up, guys? Who was the biggest steal of this year's draft, Jeff?
I'm going to throw out a couple different names. We're mostly going to stick on the offensive side because we're a fantasy show, and that's what we're going to talk about. But I really do think Christian Watson of the Green Bay Packers is going to turn out to be one of the best wide receivers in this class. You look at him, just in terms of athletic traits, ability. The only reason Christian Watson didn't go in the first round is because he played in the FCS. But you look at him when he played there, he looked like the 22-year-old kid playing against 15-year-olds. That's how much he dominated. I think Christian Watson has a lot of Jordy Nelson traits, and now he's going to go to a situation playing with Aaron Rodgers right off the bat. George Karlaftis is another late-round first that I really like. I think the Chiefs got excellent value there. And then Sam Howell getting picked in the 5th. if this guy works out at all, and he's only playing behind Carson Wentz, a 5th-round draft pick, Sam Howell was projected as a top 15 pick at one point. I think Sam Howell, quarterback for the Washington Commanders right now, could end up as a big steal as well.
Pierce, who are you looking at for your biggest steal?
Well, Malik Willis wasn't ranked as a top 15 pick at some point. He was ranked as a top 15 or better pick basically every day leading up to the draft. So for Malik to drop all the way down to the 3rd round and end up on a pretty decent, I mean, it's Jeff's favorite team. I can't believe he's not hyping up Malik Willis here. He loves the Titans. That's a steal. Most teams were expecting to use a 1st-round draft. Now, maybe these quarterbacks really are much worse than we expected, or maybe it's just the matter of teams had other needs all throughout the first 2 rounds. So these quarterbacks just kept falling, and Tennessee has a pretty solid team. Malik doesn't have to rush into a position to start a quarterback. I would like to see them get some help at the offensive line, which they didn't do. But I think Tennessee made off pretty well getting Willis in the 3rd round.
Yeah, that could be some pretty good value for them, especially if they decide to move off Tannehill if he continues in a downward direction after the 2022 season. Hey, Pierce, who had the best draft overall? Which team?
Most people alluding to what Jeff already said, it's these offensive weapons is typically what get rated really high, or the flashy defensive weapons. For me, if I'm going to grade out, I like the offensive line. I think if you build offensive line wise in the long run, you're going to have a better team. So I like what Seattle did. They got a top 10 lineman in Charles Cross. They got another lineman in the 3rd round that was projected to be a 2nd-round pick. So they solidified their offensive line. I know a lot of people question their choice to go after a running back early in the draft, considering they already have 2 running backs. But with Carson and Penny having injury issues, and also, I mean, running backs get injured in this league, and Pete Carroll likes to run with running back, so I'm not going to second-guess that. I do like what they did, though, with the offensive line. If they can figure out their quarterback situation, I think Seattle could be a really good team this season.
Well, that should work out well for future Seahawks quarterback Nick Foles there, Jeff.
Yeah, hey, I'm telling you, man, Nick Foles' watch is on right now. He's a free agent. Seattle, I'm just saying. You only got Drew Lock right now. Everyone's all hot and bothered over the Jets draft. I mean, it's fine. Like, some good players obviously are going there, but like they also drafted a wide receiver 10th in a really deep wide receiver class, and they took like the first running back off the board, which generally doesn't really work out that well. So, it's not like Pierce alluded to. I'd rather side with guys, shoring up their O-line as well. I think Charles Cross was a good pick by the Seahawks. I like the Kansas City draft a lot. They got Karlaftis, which is great value. Trent McDuffie is good value too. He graded out very well. And then they got Sky Moore, who maybe is not going to replace Tyreek Hill, but like he's going to be a very solid underneath receiver for them. So Kansas City sticks out. I still think the absolute best draft is the Green Bay Packers. This team got so scorched in the 1st round for not taking a wide receiver. But what did they do? They added 3 high-end defensive players, Devontae Wyatt, Kingsley Mbarge. And then they got 2 underrated wide receivers as well. Romeo Doubs is really good, along with Christian Watson. Their draft, to me, is the deepest. They addressed 3 different areas of need because they addressed the O-line a bit too. I think the Packers hit it out of the ballpark. If Watson develops, it's going to be a monster draft for the Packers. And shout out to the Colts as well, getting a couple good values with Alec Pierce and tight end Jelani Woods. You're going to want to watch Woods in like rookie drafts here. He could develop into a beast, absolutely.
Jeff, which team had the worst overall draft? We're hearing Patriots left and right. Do you agree with that?
I mean, the Patriots, sure. I mean, I guess you could get on the Patriots if you want. To me, it's the Panthers. This team took an O-lineman, and that's fine. Like, with their 4th overall pick, but this was a deep O-line draft. Like, they could have traded back. They didn't have a 2nd-round pick. They could have traded back, taken Trevor Penning like mid-round, and then gotten more draft picks for it. And then what did they do with their 3rd rounder, Emerson? They wasted it on Matt Corral. Like, Matt Corral wasn't even rated in the top 5 quarterbacks in this draft by a lot of people. And is he really an upgrade over Sam Darnold? So you've got a team with tons of positional need, especially on defense. And they take an O-lineman, that's fine, high, but then they don't make any trades to shore up their draft. They draft a quarterback who probably won't even see the field with their 3rd rounder. And they basically just, have a nothing draft. It's great they got a high-end O-lineman, but they did address no other needs. And in my opinion, Corral's probably going to end up as a wasted pick. So the Carolina Panthers, ever since that Sam Darnold trade, I'm telling you, this franchise has made a ton of bad decisions.
Yeah, Matt Rule's job security is tied heavily to the Panthers' level of success this season. We've seen him whiff on multiple quarterback acquisitions already. What do you think about this one, Pierce?
I think you need to give Rule a little bit of a break here. It's a third-round
No,
quarterback.
I won't give him a break.
If the third-round quarterback doesn't work out, you can't
Traded
really
for
throw
Sam
him under the
Darnold.
bus.
I'm not giving him a break.
I'm also talking overall. He's 10-23 is his record the last 2 seasons.
That's 500 for Pierce, though. So.
He's made plenty of mistakes. Carolina's made plenty of mistakes. But one thing they did address, which we've talked about for years, is getting an offensive lineman. Did they pick the right lineman? I don't know if that was the case. Should they have traded down to get more picks? Absolutely, like Jeff mentioned. But they did what they did. They took a lineman. That's what we wanted, or what they wanted. And Matt Corral is really, I mean, he's fine. He's whatever. They didn't have very many picks, so we can't really throw them under the bus. New England clearly was the worst, reaching for the guard in the first round and then drafting a wide receiver that didn't even seem like that was one of their main needs. That's kind of the trendy thing. I also think the 49ers didn't really do much. They didn't have a bad draft, but the 49ers need to take a step forward if they're going to go to the Super Bowl, and they really didn't add anything. Yeah, they got an edge rusher, but it seems like every team in this draft added an edge rusher, so I'm not really going to boost them up right there. I really think they needed to work on their secondary. They didn't improve their secondary. I can't see this team taking the next steps to the Super Bowl.
All right, Pierce, from the draft, out of all these picks, give me a dude who's going to have an immediate fantasy impact.
Chris Olave is going to just explode onto the scene. The Saints were dead 2 months ago. I mean, we were talking about how much of a train wreck this team was, and it looks like Winston's going to be back. You've got Olave's going to be back. Michael Thomas is excited to be playing with another Buckeye. You've got Kamara is still there. Yeah, they lost Terron Armstead, but they replaced him with a second-round tackle. He obviously isn't a perfect replacement, but the line is still halfway decent. I think Olave and the Saints' offense is going to be really explosive. It's also, I mean, obviously they're going to have trouble with Tampa, but the other teams in that division, they can absolutely put some points up and have a big season.
All right, Jeff, what do you think?
Well, just to finish that Saints point, let's not forget, like, the Saints have actually owned the Bucs, especially like just overall, outside of that one postseason loss, obviously. So, yeah, I like the draft for the Saints as well. And let's not, like, Michael Thomas, I mean, would we really be shocked if he got traded? So I like the Olave call too. I think everyone's kind of looking at Drake London in Atlanta, but like, I don't know, man. I mean, Kyle Pitts is going to command a lot of targets. How much are they going to be passing the ball? They are going to be passing the ball a lot because their defense still stinks. But another contender for worst draft, by the way, in my opinion, Atlanta. But I think Christian Watson, Treylon Burks, 2 other guys who are going to have just immediate fantasy impacts. Watson could be a bit of a project, I admit. Again, he played in the FCS. We don't know what he's going to come. If he comes in and hits the burners right off the bat, though, with Aaron Rodgers, man, like that connection, I'm telling you, it's going to be something. But Treylon Burks is a player who I'm very confident is going to be able to come in and make plays for the Titans right off the bat. All those targets with A.J. Brown gone. Robert Woods coming off ACL. I think Woods will be an important part of the offense too. But Treylon Burks is a guy you should be targeting. And I think I'd almost prefer him if you were in a rookie draft or something over Drake London, just because of the landing spot and the fact that the Titans are a good team. So Treylon Burks, Christian Watson, 2 other wide receivers can have immediate impact.
Yeah, Marcus Mariota 7-in at quarterback. That changes things a little bit too. I mean, the Falcons could be bad again in 2022. Hey, real quick, how did your NASCAR picks end up this past weekend? I was out of the loop. Did everything?
The race is today at noon.
It's today at noon. Did it get rained out or something yesterday?
Yeah. Yeah.
All right, good. Just making sure you guys knew that. I look forward to paying attention today to what's going on in NASCAR. All right, Jeff, hang out. We need you for some golf coming up. Pierce, you're free to go. We'll see you tomorrow, and we'll get some Major League Baseball fantasy picks coming up right after this. All right, we kick off our baseball segment here with a little bit of breaking news. This is why you need to follow DK Nation on Twitter. The Mets have designated Robinson Cano for assignment. So the top team in the National League saying, see ya, we don't need ya. They're going to be on the hook, though, for almost $40 million remaining on his contract. So now we have a question about this. We'll ask to our MLB panel. DraftKings contributor Matt Meiselman, what's up, dude? RotoWire's Eric Halterman. Is this the end of the line for Cano, Eric?
Probably not. I guess he gets one more chance here. It's been 12 games, 12 pretty ugly games for a 39-year-old who's coming off a PED suspension. So I doubt he gets a long second look. But given how good he was in 2020, well, maybe we know why he was that good. But he hit 316, slugged 544. Given his long resume, he gets at least one more chance. I don't think teams completely give up after 12 bad games.
Okay. How do you feel about it, Matt?
Yeah, I'm kind of on the same page. I guess if we take out 2020, like if we think that that's the outlier, now Cano over his last 3 years or so doesn't look very good. But at the same time, Albert Pujols still has a job. And there are a lot of veterans who just, based on their experience and their reputation as being historic great players, because Cano is one of those, that'll be enough to at least get him signed somewhere. It's just, he just doesn't have much left in the tank at this point in his career, but I think someone still picks him up too.
Yeah, 43 plate appearances since he's returned from his PED suspension, 1 home run, 3 RBI. Hardly the stat line of a player taking home nearly $40 million. Let's cover the bases now. Let's get a DFS and sportsbook look at today's slate. First base here, favorite DFS player to pay out for, Matt?
So I'm going to pick a player who only has 2 hits this season, but he's really good. I promise he's really good. And that's Ronald Acuna Jr., who's missed a lot of games this year. It was a little tricky thing I did there. But yeah. I like the Braves in general against Chris Bassett, in large part because I think Bassett ends up being the slate's highest owned pitcher. I think the Mets have gotten a lot of deserved hype this year for just how good they've been across the board, but especially their pitching staff. And this game has one of the lowest totals, but at the same time, the Braves offense is really, really good yet, and we just haven't seen that come to fruition, in large part because Acuna's missed most of the games this year. So I like him, but I also like the full stack because with Matt Olson there, this is a really, really high-powered offense, and despite the bad circumstances, they can score a ton of runs in any matchup, but you're also getting leverage here because I do think the field will very heavily gravitate towards Bassett. So for tournament purposes, I think this might be my favorite stack tonight overall for the Braves.
Eric, who are you paying up for on DraftKings tonight?
Yeah, I'll go with another outfielder in a similar price range who hasn't done all that much this season, although he's been healthy, and that's Jesse Winker at 5,200. Hitting just 197 on the season with 0 homers. So maybe that'll keep his ownership rates down. But I think there are a decent number of reasons to like him, despite the fact that that poor performance is coming along with a poor barrel rate as well, which has dropped to 4.6%. So he needs to hit better going forward, but I think he can. I mean, he's a guy who wasn't just good the last couple of years. He was an elite hitter, 945 OPS over the last 2 seasons. And this season, he's still seeing the ball very well, walking 18.1% of the time against just a 12.8% strikeout rate. That tells me he's not that far from turning things around. He also has 5 hits in his last 2 games, so I guess you could say he's already turned things around. He'll get the platoon advantage here against Jake Odorizzi, who doesn't look like he really belongs in an MLB rotation anymore. 6 ERA through 4 starts, striking out just 13% of opposing batters while walking 11.6%. So I think this is a game where Winker continues down the right path and starts looking like the Winker we've come to know these last couple seasons.
All right, well, at second base, I need your favorite DFS value play, Eric.
Yeah, let's stick in the outfield and go with Max Kepler for 3,400. He's off to a great start this season with a 164 WRC plus, hitting 257. He's got 5 homers already, and that comes with a career best barrel rate of 14%, walking nearly as often as he's striking out this season, a 13.3% walk rate against a 15.7% strikeout rate. He'll get the platoon advantage here against Tyler Wells, who I was interested in this season just to see what he would do in the transition from the bullpen to the rotation. Doesn't seem like he's doing all that much, though. 5.54 ERA on the season, not getting many whiffs, just a 17.5% strikeout rate. So I like Kepler to continue his hot start here.
Who do you like, Matty?
I'll stick with the same game, but I'm actually going to go with a pitcher here. Although I feel like it's worth mentioning the Orioles as value plays, and that's kind of why I like this spot. So The Orioles just, apologies to all the Boston fans in the house, but the Orioles just had a nice offensive day. I'll just leave it at that on Sunday against the Red Sox. And the Orioles are really cheap, but the pitcher going against them, Chris Paddock, is only $7,200. And there are a lot of cheap hitters tonight. I think this will be a night where people spend up, and getting a cheap value play type pitcher in Paddock for only $7,200, I think it allows you to afford expensive stacks that otherwise people might not want to pay up for. So it is potentially leverage against a chalky Orioles offense, it's an offense that's playing well, but Mancini and Mountcastle in particular are priced below $3,000. I think they'll be popular picks. So I'll go to the other side and take the cheaper pitcher.
All right, Meiselman, at the hot corner, favorite run line or money line bet? Talking baseball tonight on the DraftKings Sportsbook.
So Eric has scared me a bit here because it's Jake Odorizzi and the Astros, and I don't like Jake Odorizzi. I'm not a Jake Odorizzi truther by any means, but I think the situation sets up well for the Astros as decent sized favorites around -130, 135, because Mitch Haniger is hurt, and I think Jose Altuve is returning to the lineup today. So I just don't know if that's priced in yet. Altuve's been on a rehab assignment, but by all accounts, it seems like today's the day he finally makes it back. And the Astros' offensive struggles, I think it's had a lot to do with the fact that Altuve's not there. So I think this is a team that, despite having the lesser pitcher on the mound for this game, is so far ahead offensively with the depth of the lineup when it's healthy. Maybe you want to wait to make sure Altuve's confirmed first, but I think he plays, and I think the Astros should be larger favorites.
Eric, favorite run line or money line bet?
Yeah, my favorite here is slightly less of my favorite than it was last night, but the Marlins are now -160 against the Diamondbacks. They were -150 last night, I think, and -155 earlier today. So it seems like a lot of people have the same opinion here. Arizona just can't hit this season. They have a 75 WRC plus as a team. They're hitting 181, 273, 328. That WRC plus matches Nick Ahmed's career mark for reference there. The Marlins on the other side have a 111 WRC plus. That's good for 7th in the league, or the same as, say, Chris Taylor's career mark, to get a sense of the difference between those two lineups. So it's a clear advantage for the Miami side there. And I think they have the advantage on the mound as well, although it's not as large. Pablo Lopez versus Zach Gallen, both pitchers who have been quite good this season. But Gallen was coming off a shaky year last year, whereas Lopez was excellent before he got hurt. And I think Lopez has arguably been even better this season. 27.1% strikeout rate against just a 4.7% walk rate. I like Lopez a little bit more, but it's really the difference between those two lineups. Arizona just can't hit this season. So I think even at -160, I like Miami.
All right, guys, thanks so much. You've both been thrown out at home, so the segment is coming to an end. We have golf on the horizon after this break. All right, welcome back to The Sweat, everybody, presented by DraftKings. I'm Emerson Latzia. Jeff Ulrich has returned because we're going to talk a little bit about the Wells Fargo Championship odds just released for this week over on the DK Sportsbook. But real quick, Jon Rahm taking home the victory. Wire to wire, I believe third golfer this year that has at least led or co-led in all 4 rounds of a victory. What'd you learn, either about Jon Rahm or someone else in the field? I wish Reed was here because Tony Finau ended up actually battling back a little bit after some poor putting performances Thursday and Friday.
Yeah, Tony Finau just reeling people in for future events. You know, he's going to go up to 20-1 next to it. Everyone's gonna be like, "Oh, Tony Finau, he's great." He's actually, he is in this field. He's actually plus 2,500. But
yeah.
Jon Rahm needed that. I mean, he really did. It wasn't like he wasn't playing that bad. He was really struggling to score. Like his putter just had stayed cold for like well over a month. You know, didn't really get in contention at the Masters or anything like that. And he really just needed like a little bit of a confidence boost and just say, okay, I'm like, you know, the top 3 player in the world here. I am so far head and shoulders above the field that I need to just prove it to myself and just get a confidence. That's exactly what he did. So I think only good things coming from Jon Rahm. We've got 2, major championships coming up, the PGA and the US Open, with tougher setups that are really going to favor Jon Rahm. So it's perfect timing for him, really, going into like the big major season where I think Jon Rahm has a real chance to add to his major total. Nothing surprising. It would have been more surprising if he didn't win. He was like a plus 350 favorite. So sucks for us who were trying to bet long shots, but good for Jon Rahm and his future major total winning percentage going forward.
DK Nation's Colin Sherwin has joined the party as well. Rahm was impressive, my man. It's his 6th straight season with at least 1 win. His first victory of the year, too. I believe his first one since the U.S. Open last year. You're on mute, brother.
Oh.
It's okay.
No, it's not.
There
it
is. There it is.
You ever do that? You ever have to like upload that new like push software that they send you immediately when you don't need to? So that's just what happened to me.
Okay.
Jon Rahm, I thought he played really well. If he needed to win by 2 more shots, I think he could have. It was just sort of like in a spot where he just did enough to get it done in Mexico. I think that I saw some minus 150 out there after the 3rd round for him to finish it. That seemed like a gift to me. So he playing really well. Soft field this week, new course, seems to favor his kind of game. So we were all out here hunting for long shots, but that plus 400, I think it was actually plus 400 on Monday last week for Rahm, seems like it was the way to go. So he's a guy you're definitely going to want to start looking at for Southern Hills in 2 weeks.
I mean, the relief and satisfaction was so evident when he tapped in for par there in the final hole, like, pumping his arm, like pounding his fist, and just looking up at the sky and just exhaling. So this week here, guys, odds just released on the DK Sportsbook. Another week with like a really heavy favorite in the field. And Jeff, that's Rory McIlroy. He's plus 750 to win the Wells Fargo Championship. Is this a week now that you do look at possibly betting the heavy favorite in the field?
So, I mean, we could easily get to what we call board sweeps in a row, where the favorite just comes in and wipes it out. It shouldn't shock you if Rory does, a similar thing to Jon Rahm as last week. And Rory has kind of favored these slightly I wouldn't even say shorter because TPC Potomac isn't that short, but he's kind of favored these like par 70 setups lately. At the same time, everyone's going to go back, and Rory was second at the Masters last time out. It wasn't like a dominant second place. Like he needed to chip in at the last hole and have that miraculous sand save. So I would say that fading Rory here is still fine. I feel more confident. We also have a slightly deeper field at the top, at least in my opinion. You've got guys like Henley, Fitzpatrick now in the mix, just players who I think are going to be more capable to stepping up and at a good venue for them. So Rory at plus 750, I think he's going to get a lot of action this week because people are going to say, well, it's going to happen again. Like the best player in the field is just going to wipe everyone out. But I see this field as being different. And most importantly, I see the setup as being more advantageous to like someone down in the odds winning.
And Colin, it's important too to remind people, while Rory is the defending champ, like this is a new venue. It's no longer Quail Hollow. It's up at TPC Potomac.
Yeah, a new venue, definitely a factor here. Until we get some data on these courses, sometimes it's a little tough to tell. But I like Rory a lot more at plus 800 than I did Rahm last week at plus 400. So I think there's definitely a little bit of value here. But the thing I like more with Rory is he tends to go really low. So the low round of the day, if you just bet that 4 times, it's very possible that Rory's going to come home with at least one of them. He's a little up and down, but like you said, he set the low round at the Masters this year, that chip in on 18 for 64, when the best round total was 64.5, and he ended up getting everybody who had the under home. He does play well this week, I think. Still one of the best players in the world. Shot 3 rounds of 73 at TPC, went 66 on the last day, went 64 on the last day of the Masters. So his ability to go super low, I think, is probably a little bit of a better bet. So, it's very possible he just fires a round much better than everybody else this week.
I mean, he's
plus 1,200 for wire-to-wire winner too. So
yeah, I like that as well.
That's kind of interesting as well with Rory.
Yeah, I mean, he's played well this season too, Jeff. Like a victory at the CJ Cup, that was at the Summit in October, and 3 top 10s and 6 tour starts. Anyone else, when you're looking either at the odds, Jeff, or before coming into this, you knew someone in the field who piques your interest?
So again, like at Potomac, I mean, TPC Potomac, we've seen it a couple times. It used to host the old Quicken Loans Championship that had like a 2-year run. Francesco Molinari won the last iteration of that event, and he absolutely just went nuts that week with his iron play. And if you look at the top 5 players there, they weren't big hitters, but man, did they just smash the ball like tee to green, approach, all gaining like over 5 strokes on approach. And I think you kind of need to look at similar players. Gary Woodland is a player I know a lot of people have been chasing, people were interested in last week, but a plus 3,500, that is a player in Woodland who can absolutely just dominate, with his iron play. And at a tougher course, I kind of like it for Woodland. I don't really want to trust his putter to get me to like 22 under or whatever, but if this is going to play at like a minus 15, minus 14 winner, I think Woodland is a player who can hit a ton of greens, can kind of just hit a ton of fairways because he doesn't have to take driver off every tee. And a plus 3,500, I like those odds. I believe he was closer to like plus 2,200 last week. So I think sticking on Gary Woodland here for one more week, who's looked really close, makes a ton of sense.
Okay. I'm seeing Tyrell Hatton there, too. Leads the tour in shots gained putting. What do you think, Colin?
Yeah. So Hatton is a guy that I definitely looked at this week as well. But Tony Finau fired a 63 on a Sunday. Finally, the guy who always falls apart at the end of a tournament put one together. So he hasn't won since 2016, and that's definitely an issue. But he's definitely starting to find his form. I think he's a guy that at plus 2,500 you can take a look at this week. But the guy I'm really going to be focused on, Keegan Bradley. Back-to-back top 10s at Texas and at New Orleans. Was 5th at TPC this year. Missed the cut here in Tampa. Didn't play real well at the Valspar, but there's a lot of parties around here for that event. He might have been out a little bit late. I don't know, but he's plus 2,800 this week. I think he's kind of in form. I think Keegan Bradley looks good. I'm a little worried about Woodland for one reason, and that is, first of all, he missed like 4 out of 5 cuts to open the season, but since then he's gone T21, T8, missed the cut at Augusta. And it's only T24 last week against a pretty soft field in Mexico. He's definitely at the game. When he does put it together, he's going to put it together quickly and get ahead. But if you're trying to get ahead of a guy who could start to really like stack it on pretty early here, I'm going to be on Keegan Bradley this week, who's also already won a major. And I think that takes, once you've won a major, I feel like once you put it together, it's a little bit easier to just sort of like stack wins on top of each other.
Colin, it's unfortunate Reed's not here because he would remind you that Tony Finau won the Northern Trust just last August. All right? That's important. Listen, that's Reed's guy, man. That's his Lord and Savior there. And
but making Finau jokes is, I've made more money betting against Finau on Sunday than anything else in the history of golf. So
yeah. And let's not forget who Jeff Ulrich has lost the most money on betting on. Sorry, Jeff. We know that. Okay, let's get to the last one here. Tiger Woods seen playing around at Southern Hills last week. Everyone's fired up. The juices are flowing because the PGA Championship is just in 2 weeks. Plus 4,000 to win this event. How are we feeling about his chances and his odds right now, Ulrich?
It's so great to have Tiger back in the game. It's great that he's going to be in the field. It's just no. I mean, he hasn't played since the Masters. You got to get some competitive rounds under you, Tiger, for us to really get behind you, I think, in the betting market here. So the other thing is, when you're looking at the major championship setup, where is Tiger going to compete later in his career? I know Phil won the PGA Championship last year, but it was kind of at a really quirky setup at Kiawah Island. I don't think this is going to be anything. It's going to play tougher, longer rough. It's just not really what we want to target with Tiger. Wait till the Open. at St. Andrews. Wait till he gets a few more competitive rounds under his belt, and wait till he gets to a venue where he's not trampling through rough. He knows how to play. He can play those old, like, veteran crafty shot maker shots. I'm still interested in Tiger at the Open. I'm not interested in him at the PGA Championship. I'm just going to sit back and watch, be happy he's playing.
Yeah, speaking of the guy you've lost the most money betting on, Louis Oosthuizen has the same odds as Tiger there for the PGA
exactly.
Championship.
I mean, and the fact Tiger is still at par with Louis, I mean, you just can't bet Tiger. So.
Okay. Colin, how do you feel about Tiger's odds here? I believe they were around the same neck of the woods, I think, to start the Masters, too.
They were. Friends don't let friends bet on Tiger Woods. Like, this is just a terrible decision. Like, look, it's great Tiger's back. It's good for the game. It's good for the ratings. It's good for the prize purses. It's good for everything else. But it's not good to bet on. In fact, if anything, this is just going to add some equity to the prize pool that you should be taking down in other places. Run screaming from this. Jeff's theory on St. Andrews, that's a course where so many different guys who are not necessarily competitive week to week will have a chance. Sure. I mean, if you're going to take a shot, double greens, why not? Weird setup, road hole, whatever you got to do. Like, that's fine. But this is not, with the distance that the PGA Tour is, with the rough, with everything else. This is not it, Chief. Just run screaming. No. In fact, if you can get a no somewhere and lay like 100 to 1 on no, just take 1% of your net worth and increase it. Like, this is not happening.
Yeah, Ulrich, he's plus 4,000 at St. Andrews right now. You feel more comfortable betting that.
I mean, look, again, I don't think you need to bet Tiger Woods in the majors this year. But if you're saying where should you do it right now today, it's the Open or nothing. I mean, he's got the experience there. Again, as Colin laid out. Look, Zach Johnson, Mark Leishman, and Usti got in a 3-man playoff. Like at the last time we had the Open at St. Andrews, so anything can happen there. It's not. I don't even think that plus 4,000 is necessarily a great bet, but he's live. He's much more live at St. Andrews as he's going to be in a few weeks at Southern Hills. There's no doubt about that.
Yeah, it's going to be the 150th Open in July, and I don't know if you saw the story last week, guys. They're expected to shatter attendance records, and I'm sure Tiger Woods probably has something to do with that, combined with the venue.
Tiny bit.
just a wee bit. Thanks, guys. You were both fantastic this morning. Final break of the show's coming up after our final block of the show's coming up after our final break of the show. And puck drops on the NHL playoffs tonight. We got Paul and AJ here to talk about it right after this. All right, this is it. Don't get scared now. The march to lift Lord Stanley begins tonight for 16 teams. AJ Scholes, Paul Bruno, the riveting RotoWire duo. Let's get right into it, guys. The DFS and Sportsbook preview of the first night of the NHL playoffs. 4-game slate. Who you paying up for in DFS, Paul?
I'm looking at 3 difference makers, not going to the top of the board neither in any case. I'm noting that Carolina will be without Freddie Anderson in nets, and I look for the Bruins to take full advantage here in Game 1. That means their top sniper, David Pasternak's in play, costing $7,300. Another target for me is Vlad Tarasenko of the Blues, who comes into play tonight for $6,400. I don't get that at all. He's been on fire for about a month. His physical style of play is going to fit right in with the style that is going to characterize this entire series. I think he's going to pace the St. Louis attack, and that begins tonight as well. And then finally, Evander Kane will be a difference maker for the Oilers. This guy's auditioning for his next big contract, and I don't see how the Kings will slow him down when he gets to going running around. Plug him in for $6,000 tonight.
AJ, who's worth spending up on?
Yeah, I'm going to go up for Kirill Kaprizov tonight at $8K. Among the top priced guys. There's some uncertainty, as of now regarding who is going to start for the Blues. Binnington has played 3 of their last 5, but Husso was struggling beforehand, though he was the starter for much of the back half of the season. So all that to say, I think the Wild are a team to target tonight based on the matchup, and I would expect Kaprizov to continue to carry that Wild offense, making him well worth the price at $8,000.
All right, so for value then, who do you want to roster? AJ.
I'm going to start with Seth Jarvis here for the Carolina Hurricanes at just $4K. He's on a 7-game point streak, so I definitely think he should be a little bit higher. Andrei Svechnikov is expected to be back in the lineup after sitting out the regular season finale, so Jarvis gets to play with him again. And then I also like Ilya Mikheyev if he remains in the top 6 role at 3,600. The lines could shuffle up a bit with Andrei Kasha back from injury, but I think Mikheyev will stay in the top 6 there, probably in a second-line role, and so at 3,600, that's really good value.
Where can we find value, Paul?
I love the call on Mikheyev. He's in a great spot alongside Tavares. Johnny T has made a lot of guys look good on his wings, and he doesn't get credit for it. That's a great price for the Russian winger who's playing for his next contract, whether it be in Toronto or elsewhere. It's a big stage for him. I think there's also going to be a lot of scoring in the St. Louis-Minnesota game, and I like the way David Perron's been playing. He's come out on fire with the Blues over the last few weeks, thriving on the big stage before. This guy knows what to do when the lights get on in the playoffs. Logging right wing minutes on the top line alongside O'Reilly, one of the best puck passers in the league. The winger comes in, Perron comes in at only $4,100 tonight. Finally, I said I think the Edmonton Oilers are going to roll the Kings tonight, and I look for Ryan Nugent-Hopkins to play a big part. He always does when this team's going well. Still, he only costs $4,400 this evening.
Guys, let's look at some future bets, too, while you're here. What's your favorite series prop available on the DK Sportsbook right now, Paul?
I like the Blues over Minnesota at plus 120. I've been talking about this team for about a month and a half now, and I think they're going to be a surprise in the postseason. I also said the Penguins are in a bad matchup against the Rangers. I think even my partner will agree to that. So I'm not trying to pile on, AJ, I swear. But I'll go to the Rangers in the series spread bet to win it by more than 1.5 games for the 180 payoff there.
AJ, talk to me.
Yeah, I actually like some of the player props here when you look at the Boston-Carolina matchup, the series player props, and there's 2 that I think you can double down on. You know, with Antti Raanta set to start for the Hurricanes, I think Boston could put up a ton of goals, and you can get David Pastrnak to lead the series in goals at plus 425. If you're on that, you might as well look at the head-to-head goal prop versus Sebastian Aho. You can get Pastrnak to win that at minus 125. And then, you know, I know Paul's going to hate hearing this, but even money to get the Lightning to win the series against Toronto, I think you have to at least consider it. I mean, when have you gotten positive value out of the Tampa Bay Lightning over the last 2 years to win a series? It doesn't happen because they haven't lost in 2 years. So I expect them to win again against Toronto, and I think there's good value there.
Yeah, looking to become the first team to win a cup in 3 consecutive seasons since the Islanders won 4 straight from 80 to 83. AJ, let's go ahead and lock in a cup winner before we drop the puck on the 2022 Stanley Cup playoffs. So Colorado the favorite to win at plus 330, then Florida, Calgary, and Toronto. Where would you put your money right now?
Well, I did already put my money on the Penguins a while back, but I'm not feeling great about that. I agree with Paul. I'm not sure they're going to get past the Rangers. So I do think it's Colorado's year. I mean, they should cruise past the Predators in the opening round, and that could give them a real advantage because I think that Blues-Minnesota matchup could go to 7 games, so they're going to potentially be tired. Look, Colorado's got their big 3 healthy in Landeskog, Rantanen, and McKinnon. Cale Makar on the back end, and Darcy Kemper is playing some of the best hockey of his career. So I know they're the favorites. They're the least value you're going to get out of it, but I love Colorado this year. I think it's time for McKinnon to get his name on that cup.
All right, Paul, I'm going to play devil's advocate here. They did falter a little bit down the stretch. They dropped 6 of 7 with 5 of those in regulation. Will that downward trend continue in the playoffs?
Yes, it will. I'm going to tell you the 2 teams to watch for, not in the top 2 or 3 of the favorites, but they're there. St. Louis, I told you. You guys, you're going to listen. This team is stacked. They're playoff hardened, and they've won it before. They know what to do to win the cup, and I think they're going to be a solid bet at plus $2,000. If that comes through, it's $2,000 plus $2,000. I think if that comes through, a lot of people are going to get rich. But the shocker here, the cup's coming home right now to Toronto, plus 900. There you go.
Oh, stop it! We know what happens to you guys in the first round. Knock it off, Paul.
It's long overdue, and it's time.
You guys
I'll just pick two teams that aren't going to make it out of the first round.
I know, Paul, but you know what?
Neither of those teams is going to make it out of the first round.
Talk to me in about a month.
Okay, sounds good, man. We'll have tissues here for you, bud. Wipe up all those tears. That's a show. Appreciate it, guys. We'll talk to you two tomorrow. What do we got tonight? We got the slate coming up. I don't know who's on it. Probably Jeff and Glash. And then the Sweat. We're back here tomorrow morning at 11 o'clock Eastern time. We'll see you guys then.